in Ghana, the poultry industry is faced with the challenge of high feed costs, and this is mostly due to the fact that maize, which is the main energy source, is a staple food in Ghana, and then about 90% of the maize goes into human consumption. So it's kind of always a competition between humans and animal, and then that drives down up the cost elements.
Welcome to the Feed Science Podcast. I'm Adam Fahrenholz, coming to you from the Animal Food Program at North Carolina State University. On behalf of Wysenetics, I'd like to introduce everyone to our guest today. Our guest is Dr. Frank Idan. He is a lecturer in the Department of Animal Science and on the Faculty of Agriculture at the College of Agricultural and Natural Resource from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana, West Africa. Frank, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
I'm thinking here back on our guest list, you might win the prize for furthest away, at least from me, on the Feed Science Podcast. We've done a couple with some folks from Europe, but I think you might win the prize from getting furthest away.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're very glad to have you. If you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself to the audience, kind of your background and how you got to be where and what you're doing today.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam. As you mentioned, my name is Frank Idan. I am from Ghana, and I had my first degree in University of Cape Coast in Ghana between the year 2000 and 2004. Then I did my master's degree in animal science, focusing on animal nutrition at University of Ghana, Legon. Then I pursued my PhD in Kansas State University, where I did grain science, majoring in feed science and technology. So I work with Dr. Charles Stark, and I think he's one of the best animal feed scientists in the US. So I was in the US for about 4 years, and then I came back to Ghana, where I am currently working with Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Department of Animal Science, Faculty of Agric, as an animal science lecturer. So I have a couple of responsibilities, mentoring both undergraduate and graduate students, conduct research on many of the animal species. For now, we're focusing on quails, but I've worked with broilers and layers, and done some little work on ruminants, but currently my focus is on quails, where I am looking at alternative ingredients. So that is my background, and to add to that, I've also been in IPPE for about 3 consecutive years, where I made 2 presentations. So I've been in the animal sector for quite a while. Thank you.
Yeah, very very good, very good. So you mentioned your the primary work that you have been working on is the use of alternative ingredients, and I'm assuming that a lot of what you're looking at are ingredients that can replace traditional ingredients that have been used, while maintaining the proper nutrition for animals. And how much of that has been related to cost savings? How much of that has been related to looking for things because of lack of availability of their ingredients? Is it some combination of the two? What kind of led to you focusing on alternative ingredients as your kind of primary research mission?
All right. So in Ghana, the poultry industry is faced with the challenge of high feed costs, and this is mostly due to the fact that maize, which is the main energy source, is a staple food in Ghana, and then about 90% of the maize goes into human consumption. So it's kind of always a competition between humans and animal, and then that drives down up the cost element. So currently, we buying a bag of maize for that's a 50 kilogram maize for 320 Ghana cedis, and the equivalent of what I'm using, which is a rice bran, which is one of the ingredient which is not properly utilized, so it's highly underutilized, is about 70 cedis. So
Okay.
the gap is so high. So we're trying to
Hmm.
see if incorporating this into the diet can drive down the cost of the feed for farmers to be able to have some margin on their production. So in terms of costs, I think the ingredients I'm selecting now have high potential in driving down the cost of feed.
Gotcha. So you mentioned rice bran.
Yeah.
Any other kind of particular or promising ingredients that you've started working with as well?
Yeah, so I've used wheat bran, which is commonly used by most researchers. And then there's one new one we are trying, cassava starch residue.
Hmm.
So it's the residue that obtained from the extraction of starch from cassava for industrial purpose. So we're working on that. Then there is also brewers spent grains,
Hmm.
which we also doing some work with on. Then mango seed kernel, which is one thing that I would try to look at. I made a student work a lot on it. We did the chemical composition. It was promising, but we are yet to try it on any animal. So the mango seed kernel is also one promising byproduct ingredient, which can do the trick for us.
So normally, when we think of using byproducts and co-products, a lot of what we are looking at is high nutritional availability, as far as it being something that the animal can utilize, but and then also of course the economic side and just availability in general. So most of the co-products that we use in the US are going to be things that are relatively close by. I'm going to use peanut meal if I am in the southeast where we grow peanuts. I'm probably not going to use it so much in the Midwest or on the West Coast unless I really specifically want that particular ingredient. Are the byproducts or co-products that you're looking at, are they all locally available there in Ghana, or are some of these actually also being brought in from elsewhere?
Okay, so apart from the wheat bran, all the rest I mentioned are locally available.
Okay,
And Ghana is a very small country, so moving from one end to the other is quite easy.
sure.
So they are all locally available, yeah.
Is there any competition for these byproducts that they're being used for something else, or are the industries that are producing the products and having these byproducts very happy to use them in animal feed because they otherwise don't have a good place to sell these products into?
So the competition is very minimal. I think for rice bran, for instance, at some point in time, farmers were just after processing, they were burning it. So
Hmm.
because they didn't know what to use it for. But when we started looking at it, I think the interest in getting these products into the formulation is going up. So there's no competition from any other industry apart from the animal industry. Probably maybe if we strike a competition to be maybe between poultry and then ruminants. Otherwise,
Hmm.
it's only useful for animal feed.
Gotcha. Cost is obviously a benefit. Availability of the ingredients are obviously a benefit, but we all know that when we use byproducts or co-products, there are challenges that go along with that. So, I think we'll kind of work from the creation of the diets down to the animals themselves. Starting with the creation of the diets, what are the struggles that you face with trying to use these co-products and then actually formulating the diets for the animals? Obviously, I'm sure that they don't have the perfect amino acid profile or the best mineral profile in all cases. So, what are some of the formulation challenges that you run into when you try to use these products?
All right, I think the major challenge is the variability in the composition. These ingredients are not consistent in terms of their nutrient profiles. So depending on where the ingredient is coming from and the processing methods, you may have some one or two variability when it comes to the actual nutrient constitution. So what we are trying to do is to probably try and then add some additives, which may include enzymes to help the animal digest the non-starch polysaccharide component of these byproduct ingredients. So we're also looking at going through maybe solid state fermentation,
Hmm.
where we try to ferment this product with known fungi, mostly Saccharomyces, to try and then improve on the nutrient profile of these products. So when we do that, we'll be able to have a consistent profile for these nutrients. And then the other challenge is the fact that most of the softwares that I use were not developed here. So
Mm-hmm.
the profile that they use in calibrating the software might be a bit different from the nutrient profile of the ingredients over here. So it kind of can
Sure.
give you some kind of false information
Mm-hmm.
if you rely so much on them, because the environmental conditions can have effect on the nutrient profiles.
Sure. Yeah. Probably have to develop a whole new ingredient matrix, to
Yes.
match the ingredients that are there. You mentioned the variability. I know one thing that has occurred over time. I mean, we can use something like like soybean meal that at one point was a byproduct and has since become obviously a major feed ingredient. Um, but at one time when the only thing that was concerned was the oil and the meal was just completely a byproduct. So we're going back 100 years or so. Um, it also wasn't particularly consistent. It was just trying to get it out the door and take it away somewhere. But over time, as it became more utilized, there was pressure that could come back from, in this case, the animal feeding industry to say, "Hey, we need a more consistent product." We've seen that also happen with things like distillers grains. We've seen it happen with things like wheat bran, where we're able to go back to the producers of the food and say, "Hey, if we're going to buy your byproduct, though, we need it to be more consistent." Has there been any of those conversations there in Ghana of going back to the people that are making the products that are ending up with the byproducts of asking for more consistency, or are you not quite at that point?
So we're not quite at that point yet. So
Okay.
we're trying to meet with the processes to try as much as possible to get them to give us a consistent product.
Hmm.
In that case, we can be confident that going forward, we can utilize this ingredient and we'll be fine.
Gotcha.
So it's one thing that we're working on. So there's a conference coming on next year over here, and we're trying to see if we can invite some of these producers so that we can talk to them about how to improve on the consistency of this product.
We've talked a little bit then about bringing the ingredients in and potential complications with formulation and trying to make sure that we can use them nutritionally. How about on the manufacturing side? With bringing co-products in, there's often issues with handling and receiving and storing, further processing, all of that. So, have any of the co-products that you've used, have you found them to be particularly difficult or particularly easy to work with, such that those that are manufacturing the feed will be willing to adopt them?
All right. Thank you for this question. I think we don't have so much of a problem with these kind of products that come in, because they normally come in dry and in bags. So you just need a dry place, and then you just pack them so that when you need them, you just go for them. So about 2 years, 2 years I've started using these products, I haven't faced any challenge on the manufacturing side.
Okay, excellent. And then that gets us then to the animals themselves. What have your experiences been as far as trying to then use the co-products, and you know how do the animals respond to them? Are you getting good growth response and good feed efficiencies? Or is there anything that you've run into where the animals have said, "No, I don't want to eat that. I don't like that very much." How has that looked?
Okay, so the so far with the rice bran, we only have tested them on quails. and the result that we obtained, feed intake was okay. Um, the body weight gain was comparable to the control diet, which was corn soy diet.
Mhm.
But just that the FCR is quite a bit higher compared to the control diet. But otherwise, it's the animals are pretty good on it, and then it has not triggered any unforeseen mortalities. So I'm thinking that there's so not so much to be done on it. But the issue here will be that probably the quails being more hardy, we might not be able to confidently say that this will be the same for maybe broilers or layers. So our next target is to move into broilers and then see how we can use similar diet to see how their performance is going to be like.
I think then to kind of to wrap up our primary conversation and on the work that you're doing, can you speak a little bit just to what kind of the research and development process is like here, how you go through the process of planning these experiments out, who's helping provide the funding for it, all of that, because I think in a lot of cases, those who aren't part of academia or didn't spend a lot of time going through research projects in graduate school or things like that may not have a great understanding of what it's like trying to go through the process of taking some ingredient maybe that's never been used in animal feed and deciding how it's going to be used, and kind of what that research process actually looks like, just trying to find out whether or not it's something that we can utilize in animal feeding.
So on the funding side, we don't have much more bigger grants over here. So there is some grants that we have in our university, which is called CREF. So we apply for seed funds. Then we get students, those who are doing the undergraduate project here. Every undergraduate does a project. So we look at the byproduct that is promising. We select them. We sample them from different locations. We send them to the nutrition lab. We analyze for the approximate composition. And then when we are satisfied that they contain uh, good nutrient profile, then we move on to check the anti-nutrients in them. If they are not anti-nutrient that are too high, that can seriously depress animal performance, then we then move on to look at how to incorporate that into the diet. But normally it's the quantities to start with, which is sometimes a bit confusing. So you need to do some much more analysis to see the level that will not cause too much depression in terms of feed intake and body weight. So this is what we do here on the R&D side.
So there's quite a bit of work that goes in before you ever make the first feed or ever feed the first animal. There's a lot that goes into trying to decide which types of ingredients to target, how nutritionally beneficial they might be. You mentioned anti-nutritional factors that they could
Yeah.
potentially contain, all the laboratory analysis. So there's quite a few steps that we have to do before we're even able to, test out the feeding side.
Yes, of course. That's what goes in there because you wouldn't want to just put in any dye to the animal, which can cause a lot of depression. These studies you need ethical approvals, and then for you to
Mhm.
feed any animal on the welfare side, you should also consider the animal. So you need to provide them with diet that will not cause any problem to
Mhm.
them. So that is why it has to go through all these series of tests before we uh, are sure that using this diet will improve performance and reduce costs.
Makes a lot of sense.
It's time for our famous three.
Well, I appreciate the good discussion on alternative ingredients and how you guys are looking at them there in Ghana, and then also just kind of the general idea of what it takes to evaluate them, kind of no matter where you were in the world. It's going to be very similar, no matter where we are. With that, as we usually do on the podcast, like to close out with just a couple questions. And I think you've got an interesting perspective. I'd like to ask some questions about having done your original education there in Ghana, then come to the U.S. and now have gone back to Ghana. What would you say are some of the most beneficial things you've been exposed to in having the opportunity to learn on effectively two different continents? Like, what has been the benefit to that, that you might suggest to people, either coming from Africa and going elsewhere, or from elsewhere and traveling to Asia or Africa or Europe? What was it like getting that different perspective?
I think I really enjoyed my stay in the US because of the fact that there are more facilities.
Hmm.
So if you need to work on anything, you have hands on. If you like what I was exposed to, I was in the OH cruise feed mill. Anything we want to do, you go in there, you try your hands on, and then you get it done. But over here, sometimes getting high-end facilities are quite problematic. You may have some, all right, but they might be quite old
Hmm.
and they do not usually keep up with the changing technologies. So it's quite different here and in the US. I think I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and it has really changed my perspective about so many things, and have given me the exposure that makes me be able to blend the two to be able to assist my students
Hmm.
have the perspective that they don't have, but bringing them to the classroom for them to learn from my own personal experiences.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. From Since you mentioned the students, what would you say have been some of the most impactful things, as far as maybe what you experienced as being mentored by others, and that you're now able to take back to your students, and things that you learned going through the process of, okay, these are things that I really want to impart onto my students, as far as qualities, or the perspectives and the way that they will choose to look at things and perform their work.
I want my student to be more participating in everything that we do in the class.
Hmm.
So it's not like I just go there, stand there, tell them everything, and then ask questions, and then I leave. No, I want them to be practically involved in whatever we're doing. So, for instance, I have a class in final year which is feed analysis and management of agricultural byproduct ingredients. With this particular class, I take the student to the lab and we do all the proximate uh, and then we take different ingredients, different feedstuffs, be it forages, be it grains, and everything. We try to find out exactly what is in there. So if I come to class and I'm mentioning crude protein, I mean, it's not like an abstract, it's something that you go to the lab
Yeah.
and do it. So these are the things that I've incorporated into my lecture. So it's become more engaging
Hmm.
and then with more hands-on training for the students. So that is what is happening.
Yes, make sure that they're not just seeing something on a screen or in a textbook, and not understanding what it really means, or how that number was really developed. That hands on in the application, so they know what the basis was. Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yes.
Okay. Again, my guest today has been Dr. Frank Idan, lecturer in the Department of Animal Science, College of Ag and Natural Resources at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana, West Africa. Frank, thank you very much for your time today. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you very much. See you soon, maybe in IPP or something.
You bet. Absolutely.
All right.
Once again, my name is Adam Farnolds, coming to you from North Carolina State University in the Animal Manufacturing Program housed within the Prestige Department of Poultry Science. Thank you for listening to the Feed Science Podcast. On behalf of Wise Genetics, we'll talk to you next time.